Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to another episode of my F1 22 My Team Career Mode. This is episode number 23 for the beginning of Season 2 at the Bahrain Grand Prix. If you guys did miss the pre-season episode that was uploaded just yesterday, then be sure to go check that one out before you see this one and the remainder of the season, because you need to be clued in. We've had a lot of big driver transfers, a lot has changed for the team. Visually, we've got a very different looking car and also a brand new teammate as well. So if you want to get caught up on all the admin and what has happened over the winter break and pre-season before this race weekend here today, then check that one out. But yeah, we're here now for a fresh start, a clean slate. Everything gets reset to zero and we go again. But things are going to be very different, I hope. Last season we weren't able to get a podium. Our teammate in season 1 was, of course, at Spa, where we helped him out massively. And in the two races, ironically, that I was on to maybe be on the podium, I actually had an engine failure, both at Spa and the Mexican Grand Prix. So season 2, we've got a 16-race cabinet, and I'm hoping that a couple of those slots will be booked in for some podium trophies and even a race win trophy, maybe. I mean, we are the 5th best team on the grid. The grid spread is pretty damn close. So, you know, depending on how we upgrade and the speed at which we upgrade versus our rivals, I think we can be in a position, maybe by the end of the year, to be, you know, knocking on the door of a race win. But what I'm definite on is halfway through this year, I want to be knocking on the door for podiums at least. I feel like we'll be disappointed if we're not aiming for podiums by the halfway point this year. And I think in tandem with our brand new teammate Al Bono, I do really believe we can push for that, because I think he's going to be a really great AI teammate. Also, the fact that we've improved over the winter break, whereas, you know, teams like McLaren have declined. We've had other teams go lower than us. So I think we are in a good position. But what's going to help us even further is being able to generate more resource points. And so we've got a lot of cash here that I don't want to waste on personnel upgrades, because we know they're broken right now and not applying the game. So with this excess amount of cash, I'm going to buy another resource point generation booster on the powertrain HQ. So that means that HQ facility will earn a bit more R&D every time we get those weekly resources in the activity timeline, if you didn't know. And, you know, historically, I've never really bought that kind of upgrade on the HQ facilities, but this year we're sticking with the reduced R&D settings that you guys voted for at the start of the career mode. That means versus the AI, I have reduced R&D gain every time we do practice programs, etc. So I'm trying to do everything I can using the in-game tools, the actual, you know, tangible upgrades we can buy with our well-earned cash to try and boost the R&D as much as we can, and kind of almost offset that reduced R&D career mode setting. And speaking of earning R&D, we go through the practice programs then on the Friday ahead of the Bahrain Grand Prix race weekend, and we do have enough R&D points now in the middle of the weekend to buy some upgrades. So we're going to go ahead and invest in the chassis side of things. We are the worst chassis on the grid somehow, even though we invested so heavily last season. I think, you know, focusing on engine and aero maybe at the back end of last season, and because chassis got reset this year, that hindered us a lot. So now we've got 2 upgrades on the way with weight reduction and weight redistribution. But yeah, I think actually thinking about it more so, I think the fact that the chassis got reset, that was the regulation change that got changed, that meant that we didn't bother buying any new upgrades for pretty much the last third of the season, because we knew you would have to kind of almost buy it twice or 1.5 times, because you know you'd have to buy it to adapt it for the regulation change. So I guess that's how we maybe slipped down the order chassis wise. But now we're very much going to try and rectify that and plow every single bit of R&D into the chassis side of things. And that will massively help the car anyway. You know, mid-corner, the car's going to be lighter, direction change will feel better, and then also tyre wear will be a massive factor as well when we delve into those upgrades. But here we are then on this Saturday for the first race in this second season of the Bahrain GP around Sakir, and the new car is looking rather lovely. I really think that the hits of red on the kind of side pods and onto the halo add in and all tying together. It's a really nice, well balanced on board of this car. You know, I always try and make sure that there's enough variety in the colours that you're seeing from the onboard camera because otherwise it gets a little bit boring, in my opinion, if it's all kind of, all black or all one color, or there's not a difference in color from the halo to the chassis and the side pods. So altogether, I'm really quite happy with actually how the onboard looks of this design, as well as the offboard, of course, as the overall design, as you guys would have seen in the pre-season, bearing now the Red Bull logos, of course, as they do supply us for the engine, and that's also how we got Albon at a tiny bit of a discounted price for this season. And well, into Q1, Albon straight away laying down a market in the top 4, in I know it's only Q1, but still quite frightening actually how good he's adapted to our car straight away. And for myself, even though it's technically the same kind of car, same engine as we had last season, so in terms of drivability of the power unit, that's not changed a lot. But even just a couple of days away from this game, from the end of season 1 to when we've started and recorded this season 2, I felt very new to the game. So it's because it's such a big handling model difference, from F1 2021. Just taking a couple of days out of not playing the game definitely affected my feeling of the car, so having to get back up to grips with it a little bit. And of course, this car is a different car to the one we came to Bahrain at the start of the entire series, because it's a lot quicker. It goes quicker into the corners. It reacts a bit differently. But what's not different is the throttle pedal sensitivity. My God, the handling on this year's game, it's still so crazy in the rear end. Every single lap, every corner, you have to be so wary of your right foot on a set of pedals to watch out for that. I don't know about you guys, but I'm still very much not used to it. But we plow on then, and we're going to get going onto an actual proper flying lap then in the second part of qualifying. Obviously, should be pretty much a formality that we get through into this second part of quali. What's not a formality, though, is getting through into the top 10 shootout. I'm hoping we can do that with both myself and Albon, but it's going to be tough. It's a very competitive top end of the midfield and back end of the top teams as well. So let's find out if we can make it. I think it's been a pretty damn decent lap. Definitely tidier than the one we did in Q1. Just, tightening up the exit and not squirming on throttle as much. Last corner, trying to get the nose turned in as much as we can, and then ploughing on to the finish line. What's it going to be? It's up into P3 early days. Let's see how it ends up, though. Are we going to make it through into the top 10? Yes, we will. So a great way to start off this new partnership with Albon. Both of us in the top 10, and both Ferraris have not made it through. What is going on here? The two Haas cars of Sainz, who, remember, if you watch the pre-season video, you'll know the whole story that's developed here. Ferrari not happy with Sainz. They demoted him down to Haas alongside the other Ferrari Academy driver, Mick Schumacher. They then stole Piastri away from the Alpine Academy, but both of them have had a mare, a shocker. What's gone on there? They've got the pace. The Ferrari's still like the third best car on the R&D chart, so they've just had a mare with traffic and not getting the laps in, and both of them are knocked out. That is unbelievable. Both Red Bulls are through. Mercedes, one of the Alpines of Ocon, leading that team now ever since Fernando Alonso has retired, and of course Guan Yu Zhou, unsurprising to see him a little bit lacking of pace versus Ocon, but we've got one of the McLarens in, and then both of us have made it through, and both Haas cars made it through, so that is a little bit embarrassing, and they're going to have to try and rectify that on Sunday for sure. So already this season throwing up a little bit of, spiciness there with the storylines and what's developing here. That is, if that happened in real life, that would be so like a facepalm moment of, oh wow, you've dropped one of your drivers from last season, citing poor performance, and then both of your current drivers have been knocked out, and that driver you dropped made it through in an inferior car. That is just unbelievable. So into the top 10 shootout then, we've got a good chance, with a lack of two Ferraris. That's 2 free positions to go for not only ourselves, but also Alpine with Ocon, Lando and McLaren, and the Haas cars, of course. So we're now on to our first flying lap in Q3, trying to not overdrive the car, because I kind of remembered from season 1, a lot of the time I was finding actually when I tried to kind of, wrestle the car, it actually didn't respond as well I was hoping, and I feel like I was doing that a little bit too much as well in Q1 and Q2, so just trying to take it nice and easy and get the racing line correct. A little bit wide there, but ultimately just trying to pick up the throttle better than I have done in the previous sessions. Across the line, it is going to be P7 at the moment, ahead of Schumacher. Sainz has outdone me, though, in the Haas. And the Haas is a slower car on the R&D chart, at least. But in the hands of Sainz, could be doing an absolute number. I think we're going to see that this season, how much the drivers can make a difference. Because remember, Sainz is still, well over 80 rated, whereas Piastri in the Ferrari is under 70 rated. So you're going to see that massive difference. And I wouldn't be surprised if consistently Sainz is able to beat Piastri in the Ferrari because, the driver does make a big difference, The car obviously does matter, but I think, when you've got a grid that is already as close as the one we've gotten in Season 2 with the field spread, the driver can make all the difference. And it is very much up to the drivers, it would seem, because this is a really close bloody Q3 there. Hamilton goes on provisional pole. We've been pushed down to P9 because we've got Norris in 6th, Sainz in 7th, Ocon 8th, Albon now up into P6, so every single position has got a different car in it, it would seem. So no 2x2s here. Across the line, though, we're going to try and make it 2x2 with Albon, but no, it's only P9. We stay put in P9. I thought we could maybe try and maybe just leapfrog Norris and Ocon to P7, but no. But it will be Lewis Hamilton then that takes the first pole position, despite the Red Bull cars having a bit better pace on the R&D chart. In reality, Hamilton's pulled out the bag here to get pole. Verstappen, though, in second place, a checkerboard of Red Bull and Mercedes. I feel like this season, I don't know how much of a blip that qualifying was for Ferrari, because, like I said, they're still very much the third best team on the grid, so I don't know if they just got blocked off with traffic, but if they are going to be that woeful in reality in the race, let's see, then it may truly be this Mercedes and Red Bull fight, which looks pretty damn close, though, right now, so that'll be quite exciting. But Sainz doing a mega job to kind of, put a middle finger up to Ferrari as he gets P5, best of the rest in the Haas. Albon, though, what a debut for our team, and kind of proves why we've signed him. P6 outqualifies me by a fair amount there. I just didn't know where he found that time. It's quite incredible. Ocon 7th, myself in 9th, just behind Norris, ahead of Schumacher, though. So with it seemingly being quite a tight fight, I think it's going to be quite an exciting race. Plenty of positions on offer, maybe. So let's go to the grid and find out and go to that first race day of Season 2.
No more testing, no more practice. This is the real deal. And it's make or break here at round 1 of this year's Formula 1 World Championship. We'll be racing around 3.36 miles of the magnificent Bahrain International Circuit today. Keep an eye out for drivers locking the front left down into the tricky braking zone of turn 10. Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. An immense lap from Lewis Hamilton yesterday puts him on pole position, and Max Verstappen lines up alongside. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Russell, Perez, Carlos Sainz and Albon, Ocon, Norris, the owner-driver and Mick Schumacher, Ricciardo, Joe, Valtteri Bottas and Oscar Piastri, Magnussen, Leclerc, Lance Stroll and Pierre Gasly, Tsunoda, Vettel, Drugovich and Nicholas Latifi. It's almost time for those 5 red lights to go out then. Let's see who can prevail today. A new season then, a clean slate where anything could happen. Anthony Davidson is with me today as we get another year of Formula 1 underway.
We're into those tense few minutes before the first race then. Everyone's a little bit nervous about reliability. They haven't been running in the hot, turbulent wake of other cars in practice, and they've not been pushing at 100% for long durations. Let's hope no one has to deal with any nasty surprises.
This is going to be a very interesting first race, because I really reckon this Alpine, McLaren, Haas and our team fight, I think we're actually a lot closer than maybe the R&D chart was giving away. It seemed like Alpine were clear and they were going to be challenging Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, but it seems like in reality, maybe without Alonso at the wheel, Ocon's not quite got the speed to be right there, and it means that they're still in this fight with McLaren and Haas and McLaren a lot better, it would seem, maybe with Sainz at the wheel. And, just an in-form Norris, I guess. I think this is going to be a lot closer a fight than we thought. And then in terms of the top cars, it looks like Mercedes v Red Bull. Is it going to be Hamilton versus Verstappen 2.0 in this second season? Because Ferrari, well, I don't know. Like I said in the qualifying section, this could have easily been a blip, because we know, and we've seen it a few times, you know, we saw so many times Verstappen and Leclerc get knocked out in Q1 in Season 1. So the AI on this game are so much more susceptible to mistakes in qualifying, like, you know, not getting their lap in, or, you know, whatever, DNFing, or whatever the case is. So I think Ferrari, we're going to have to keep an eye on how they recover in this race, because, I don't know, Leclerc should, in theory, still be at his A game and be able to recover. I'm so skeptical, though, of Piastri, because he's under 70 rating, so even in a Ferrari, I just don't think he's going to do very well, and it's the same reason why Sainz in a Haas is doing very well, because he's so highly rated. Of course he's going to do that well, but it's no bother to me. It's 2 free positions, and it's a massive part of maybe why both myself and Albon were in the top 10. We line up in P9, Albon in P6, and I'm very excited about what we could do this season. And it all starts here at the Bahrain Grand Prix, but we're in good company of our old rivals McLaren from Season 1, new rivals maybe of Haas and Alpine around us. We're ready to go. All the preps come down to this, the beginning of Season 2, as we go to 5 red lights to the Bahrain Grand Prix. Lights out, and away we go. A lot of wheel spin there for the McLaren. We've got a great launch, and a bit of ERS usage will get us ahead of our fellow Brit Norris into turn 1. Albon up into P5, looking to make a move on Carlos Sainz. Verstappen trying to get the lead from Lewis Hamilton, but Hamilton comes back, I can see in the distance, and will retake P1. We've managed to get Ocon on the exit of turn 2. His line was compromised, so we're now running in P5 and P7 respectively, as Guan Yu Zhou now pulling out Schumacher as well, making a dive bomb down the inside of Ricciardo. Leclerc makes a bit of contact with the new Alpine of Guan Yu Zhou, the Chinese driver trying to find his bearings in his new team. They're both on the soft compound, so Leclerc, is he committing to a 2-stop in the Ferrari, or is he making a very audacious 1-stop as Gasly now with a big dive at the hairpin? It's all kicking off, and this fight, you know, from P10 downwards is so bloody tight, as Gasly tried to make a really audacious move. He actually did get the overtake done on Leclerc, though, because he tried to make a double overtake. That was in the hairpin. Meanwhile, Piastri gets absolutely done on the outside by Sebastian Vettel. Our old teammate Felipe Drogovic, not finding too much luck at the start of this race, finds himself down in last place in the Alfa Romeo behind Latifi. Piastri, though, overtaken by Sebastian Vettel in the inferior Aston Martin, as Lando Norris defending Ocon. Like I said, this McLaren versus Alpine scrap, I think it's a lot closer than we thought it would be. And look at Ricciardo go. He might make a double overtake. Yes, he does. Rick Bobby turning back the years, under braking, trying to go for the dive. Doesn't quite finish it off, though, and instead has to tuck in behind his teammate Norris, but will now go for the move onto a new lap number 2. We've got lots of side-by-sides there. Ricciardo on Norris. We've got Schumacher trying to get Ocon there, so Ocon struggling for race pace. He's actually falling back into his more junior teammate Guan Yu Zhou. Ocon, the new de facto team leader, but at the moment Guan Yu Zhou is right up his chuff. Ocon, though, pressurized to make a move almost on Schumacher because of that fact, and he will try and retake P10, but Schumacher's given it all he can, because there's some good potential in that Haas team this year, I feel, you know, especially with Sainz at the wheel of the Haas. I'm massively excited to see what this team can do, and already they've kind of already embarrassed Ferrari from Saturday, but whether they continue to do so here on Sunday, well, Schumacher's giving it his all. He's going to go down the inside still of Ocon, and Ocon's beached on the curb. He's nearly round. He drifts into the left-hander, and he literally got beached on that curb on the right-hand side, because Schumacher not giving any kind of, you know, he's really going for it. So aggressive is Schumi on the inside there, and really squeezes Esteban. You can see the moment where he gets caught on the curb and basically gets beached on it, and he's just a passenger at that point. And his teammate Guan Yu Zhou in his new dig sees that, and now will maybe go for his own move. As he senses one, he gets a real good slipstream on Schumacher, who's slow off that incident, and he actually used a bit of ERS there. And Guan Yu Zhou on the outside, he's on the soft compound though, so he should be looking to make the move, because anyone on the soft compound, I think, is trying to make a 2-stop work, or maybe a very audacious 1-stop, I don't know, from soft to hard. But this is a replay then of Leclerc. We missed this whilst that was going on. He's in! Leclerc's in! This is devastation. Leclerc, one of the championship protagonists last season, is in now, and he's in for a bit of damage. That must have been with his fight with Guan Yu Zhou on lap 1 against the Alpine car, and so Leclerc has gone from fighting for a championship versus Verstappen to, in Season 2, at the start of the race at least, he's in last place. He's made a stop that he doesn't want to make so early on for damage. Meanwhile, on the other side of this race, Hamilton still leads the way from Verstappen, who's given him some pressure well within 1 second. Then Perez, Russell with a bit of a gap, and he's actually being pressurized by Albon, of all people, in our car. A lot of you actually noticed that Russell, for whatever reason, has been demoted a few overall rating points into Season 2. I don't know why, because he had a really fantastic Season 1, but that's maybe why he's looking a little bit slower in that Mercedes car versus Hamilton in Season 2. So Albon doing a great job. Meanwhile, behind me, the two McLarens, Guan Yu Zhou in P10, Schumacher P11, Gasly, and a great fight going on behind between Drogovic and Tsunoda, as Drogovic tries to go round the outside. Can he make the dive down the inside? Yes, he can, showing us a little bit of that spark that he had in our team in Season 1. But Tsunoda ultimately has the inside line, and he might be shoved off the road. Yes, he will, and like Ocon, he gets beached on the curb and is sent wide. But we're looking at a replay now. This is Oscar Piastri in the Ferrari. We're looking at a replay because something's happened in his race as he looks to make the move on Lance Stroll. Ahead, you've got Magnussen making a dive bomb on Sebastian Vettel, and Magnussen getting the elbows out. Bit of an oversteer moment though for him, and ultimately doesn't get the pass done. Piastri then goes for a move that he shouldn't have gone for, and the Aston Martin re-overtakes him, and then into the hairpin, loses control of his car on the exit, and then just goes into the back of the Aston Martin. And so cut to the very next lap, Piastri is in. It's an absolute calamity for Ferrari. They've gone from, at this point last season, being the dominant, quickest car absolutely in the career mode, to now both of them have made an early pit stop for damage, and they're both running in last and second last in this race. How the mighty have fallen. Qualifying was one thing, but this race has just been a disaster for them, and there's no way they're going to recover now with the early pit stops. Meanwhile, the man they kicked out of that car is doing a stellar job in the Haas right now in P6, but we're going to try and overtake him if we can with DRS open, going to the inside, getting squeezed though right to the line, so we dodge out of that and go left instead to get the outside line for turn 1. It's going to be side by side through this entire next section on the exits. We jockey for position, opening up DRS, but then look at this speed of that Haas, giving you a little bit of insight into the AI OP straight line speed right now in the game. But we're going to brake early, go for this switchback move, and we've got the throttle on a lot earlier, and we're able to re-engage with the fight as we're now side by side again in this entire downhill section. This is turning into a titanic battle that is unfortunately losing us time to Albon and the McLarens behind us, but we're still going at it, still neck and neck. But Sainz ultimately is going to have that, because I was not going to fall foul of the same fate as Ocon and Drogovic and get shoved off onto the curb. So we thought better of it. We're going to play the patient game. We backed out of it on purpose to re-engage with the DRS and get back behind the gearbox of the Spaniard to maybe go for a move on the next main straight. But Ricciardo now is well within striking distance. He's going to have DRS on us onto that straight, and like I said, right now before the patch, the AI still have that very overpowered straight line speed, so Ricciardo is going to be a threat for sure as we go right to left, trying to hustle and harry Sainz, and he is twitching a little bit on the rear end, so this could be the move now finally onto lap number 7. But here comes Daniel Ricciardo in the slipstream. He's going to be 3 wide into turn 1. Our car, McLaren and Haas into turn 1. We give Ricciardo and Sainz the room to fight. They make contact, as ultimately if I kept my nose in on the inside there, I would have definitely been spun round or pinched. So instead we make the move now on Sainz, hopefully on this second bite of the cherry, this time on the outside for this right-hander into the end of sector 1, and we get the exit we need to finish the move off. Finally we get the Haas, and we're into P7. So that was a lot of racing, all for the same position that we were originally in because of Ricciardo getting that double move. But he is on the soft compound, so he will be pitting a lot earlier, maybe even with the next lap or two. So he's kind of going to not be in our race, I think. I think he'll fall behind us because of starting on the soft compound. Meanwhile, we watch a potential battle brewing between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton at Bahrain. It's like 2021 all over again. Verstappen, will he make a move? Open with DRS on the inside. Hamilton doesn't cover off the inside line. He'll have the inside for turn 2, but it won't matter. The Red Bull is ahead, I think, on the exit. Yes, he will. He just goes round the outside and just gets a tremendous exit that the Mercedes just couldn't match. So although his line was compromised, he actually made it work. And Verstappen, just like that, is up into P1 now. That's been in the works for 8 laps, that has. He's been right underneath Hamilton's rear wing within DRS, and he waited till lap 9 to finally make the move and charge in his Red Bull, and he's into P1. It's once again a checkerboard of Red Bull, Merc, Red Bull, Mercedes. Meanwhile, further down the order, we're looking through this midfield fight. Very close stuff here. Kevin Magnussen doing quite well in his debut in the Williams to be up there in P13 compared to Latifi in P15, but I think a lot more is to come from Williams, I think, this season. I hope so. And meanwhile, well, I mean, there's not a lot to say about these guys. Leclerc, P19, Piastri, P22. It's there's still a long way to go, lads, and there's a lot of this race to forget for the Scuderia. Their season's very much starting next episode, I think, as Verstappen and Hamilton now are in the pits, as well as Sainz and Norris behind me. And at this stage of the race, actually, we're planning on going a lot longer, because I actually want to try a very audacious strategy of going from the mediums to this soft compound, so trying a big overcut on the mediums to allow us to go hard and fast on the soft compound. Sergio Perez finally makes his pit stop as well in the other Red Bull, and he comes out ahead of Verstappen and Hamilton. I was very perplexed there, because as he came out the pit lane, I saw no cars around him, and I was very confused. But no, Sergio Perez has flat out just overtaken Verstappen and Hamilton with an amazing overcut strategy. Haven't gone one lap longer than both his teammate and Hamilton, so that's maybe proving to us that maybe going longer on the medium might be the way to go. Is into turn 1 now. Schumacher coming out the pit lane, and Guan Yu Zhou sails around the outside though with warmer hard tyres. He's up into P10, and Guan Yu Zhou's converted to a one-stop, so I say that he may fall behind Ocon. Don't think so. So Guan Yu Zhou in his debut for Alpine, he's the one leading the team now, as Ocon's down in P12 and he's in P10. Speaking of teammates and how they're doing in this race, well, Perez was ahead, but Verstappen is looking to try and get back ahead of his teammate Checo, and he does it very unconventionally. At the last corner, a bit of contact was made, and the rear end squirmed for Checo, but Verstappen now is up into P2, effectively what will be the race lead once I make my pit stop. So it's a 1-2 in theory then for Red Bull, with Hamilton down in P4, which will turn into P3. Lap 18, Drogovic, our old teammate from season 1, no luck in this race. Maybe this is why he was so slow this entire race versus Bottas. He had an engine issue the whole race maybe, because now on lap 18 finally it gives out and he has to retire from the Bahrain Grand Prix. So thanks to Drogovic, and actually Gasly also retired from this race with an engine failure earlier on. Thanks to them, Ferrari won't be last and second last. They'll be in P20 and 19, which is obviously a lot better than the previous scenario. Meanwhile now, a lap later, lap 19, we've gone a long way on these mediums. They're screaming out, and it's time to now come in with 10 laps to go onto the soft compound. So this is a bit of a risk. Those rear tyres are absolutely cooked, but we actually showed some decent pace up till about lap 17, I would say, on these mediums, because the hard compound is so, hard to warm up and rubber in. And now we're on to a set of used soft tyres, so they are going to be a bit worn already. But with 10 laps to go, I reckon we might be in a very good position, because we will be behind Albon, but we are ahead of both McLarens. So we're in P6 then, the position we're trying to fight Ricciardo for just before he came in for his pit stop so long ago now onto those hards. And now we've got basically 9 laps to try and charge after Albon, who's 3.8 seconds ahead on the hard compound, so 2 steps slower on the compound. So we should should be able to catch him. Whether our tyre wear kicks in eventually is a whole different story, though. That's definitely the gamble we've taken with this strategy, but it's one that I wanted to try just to do something different. So lap 22 then, Verstappen leads the way from Perez, Hamilton in third place, but Verstappen goes wide. Verstappen's locked up, and he's gone plainly off. It's a mistake, a high-profile error from Max Verstappen. Uncharacteristic, but he just locked up and went wide, as so many other drivers have done so far in this race previously, and even in Season 1. And so now Sergio Perez will retake the lead of this Grand Prix. Is that a bit of karma, maybe, for the contact Verstappen made with Perez to get into the lead initially? I don't know, but Hamilton now up into P2 then, and Verstappen has to lick his wounds and try and go again and close back up to those two. He had some great pace, so I think clean air he should be able to. Meanwhile, Russell way off the top 3, so really showing that kind of, lower rating for him this season for whatever reason is really hampering him, and he's quite a ways off, I would say, relative to those top 3 drivers. Then there's only a 3-second gap to Albon then in P5, and we are now within 1 second of our teammate, so we could be within a chance of overtaking him soon rather than later. Meanwhile, it's then 2 McLarens, P7 and 6, Sainz in P9, Guan Yu Zhou P10, still ahead of Ocon as it stands. And just to give you an update, the Ferraris are still in P19 and P20. Leclerc 13 seconds, or nearly 13.5 seconds ahead of Piastri, but both of them just in a world of pain this entire race. Nowhere near any kind of salvageable points today, or any kind of cars really, as Leclerc's only just catching Latifi on that lap that was. Meanwhile, back to our POV, lap 23, you would have seen there we set the fast lap of the Grand Prix 2 times in a row, so really using these soft compound tyres to good use to close up. But now it's time to make the overtake. Murray Walker once said it's easy to close up, it's another thing to pass a car. And so can we actually overtake Albon? We know he's going to be very good at straight line. Even my teammate is going to have that AI OP straight line speed. So here we go, DRS open, but we've hardly got any ERS to use, and Albon squeezes us right to the inside. We kind of keep firm with the inside line, but into the apex of turn 1 we get pinched in way too much, and I just don't have the grip to be able to dance our way around on the inside to the outside of turn 2. So even though we've got a bit of an advantage, already I can tell these soft tyres aren't as quick as they just were 2 laps ago. And just basically also that was the straight line speed. Like Albon just had so much speed to squeeze us in. So again, we go again to the inside. This time though, we learn from our mistakes of the previous attack, and we go to the outside now, and look at the ERS. We've had to use so much ERS just to try and get level with Albon there. Like, we're down to like 2% that was into turn 1, just showing how much of an advantage the AI have. But we are able to make the overtake and get up into P5 then. But because of our tyre wear, Albon is well within half a second of us, pressurising us, but he's made a mistake behind us, I can see in the mirror, and he's beached himself on the curb as well. So you can see Verstappen's in very good company. That's I think 4 drivers that have gone wide there, and his was a very similar one to Verstappen, where he just locked up and went straight on, but he even slowed down even more than Verstappen did actually on the exit. So that'll just give us a little bit of breathing room, to be honest though. So that's a good thing for us to try and maintain the P5 to the end of this race. Meanwhile, back at the sharp end, lap 26 onto 27, and look at the exit Hamilton's got here in the last corner. Hang on, could this be an upset for Red Bull as Mercedes and Hamilton go charging past with DRS onto lap 27? Lewis Hamilton is into the lead of the Bahrain Grand Prix for the first time in a long time. It's been all Red Bull this entire race ever since that overtake Max made in the first few stages of this race. But now Lewis has come through to steal the win potentially in the last 4 laps of this Grand Prix. Great move for him. It's now a 2-3 for Red Bull, and it's not going to be Perez ahead of Verstappen for much longer, because here comes Verstappen now. DRS open. Perez gives him a bit of a squeeze, there. A lot more of a squeeze than I thought Checo would ever give Verstappen, and he's going to continue to fight him through into the exit of turn 1, into turn 2. They're side by side, but Verstappen just has enough in the tank to get ahead back into P2. And well, it very much, is this really going to be a Verstappen versus Hamilton 2.0 this season? Lewis with a great bit of work in this last stint to just gain on Perez, keep the pressure on, made the move when it counted, and it may be too late for Max to close up. 1.9 the gap with a lap and a half to go, so this may just go the way of Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton as we move on to the last lap of the Grand Prix. Red Bull seem to have the much better race pace. They definitely had the better race pace this entire time, but they've tripped over themselves. They've made a couple of mistakes, and then Lewis has just been relentless versus Russell. You can see the clear difference in performance between those two cars, and Lewis very much deserves this race win for what he's done today. He's going to come across the line to win the Bahrain Grand Prix ahead of Max Verstappen, just like they were in 2021. Is that going to be the start of a second year of them fighting each other in the Merc and the Red Bull? Meanwhile, back in our world, we're on low fuel. We've had an absolute mare, and by one corner, we're not going to have enough fuel to finish this race. We're in low fuel mode, and there comes Alexander Albon to retake P5 on the line. Oh my God. That's a bit of a howler. That's a bad mistake from me. I don't know. I tried to be as close as I could on the fuel and clearly cut it a bit too fine.
Yet another historic win under their belts. Well done to the team at Mercedes. Talk to me, Ant. What was it that set them apart from the competition today?
I think a large part of the result comes down to temperament. They were able to keep their heads when everyone around them was losing theirs, and that's allowed them to get the best out of the car, to maximise the strategy, and to stay out of trouble.
After an excellent performance at the Grand Prix, I'm sure there'll be plenty of celebrations tonight amongst the Mercedes team, and they certainly deserve it.
Hamilton, Verstappen, Perez. I think we may be seeing a lot of these three on the podium, unless Russell wants to pick up his pace midway through this season. But like I said, let's wait and see where Ferrari are, because they very much had a bit of a bogey weekend. Qualifying didn't go to plan, and then the race, they just tripped over themselves with the damage. I think if you give them clean air, they're going to be up there fighting these guys as well, or snapping at the heels, so don't count them out. But if Ferrari aren't there, it very much might be these two at the top there of this race, fighting all season long, Hamilton versus Verstappen. But that is a very solid race weekend for us, and very much not one for Leclerc and Piastri. The two-stop, the early pit stop for damage, P18 and 19. That is abysmal stuff for Ferrari. For Haas, their new signing, Carlos Sainz, does well to get them points in the first race, P9. And Guan Yu Zhou, very well done to him to get P10 ahead of Ocon. I counted him out a little bit. I thought Ocon would be the race, the kind of team leader, but Guan Yu Zhou showing some very good racecraft and race pace and strategy to get ahead of his teammates. So in the constructors, early doors, we're in third place, but like I said, it's early days, so it really does not matter at this stage. But you got to say, we're looking pretty good in terms of that fight with McLaren, Haas, and Alpine. I think we've got the measure of them, at least in race pace terms here at Bahrain, but this is, to the next one, Jeddah is going to be a very different circuit, and then again to Australian Grand Prix. So let's kind of wait a couple episodes into this season to really see the pattern and the true pecking order. But all in all, a very, very strong first race for myself and Alexander Albon. Guys, if you have enjoyed the start of Season 2, then be sure to hit that like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you're around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.